Hey there, Postal here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the P-51D and the new pilot that you can earn by the end of February, Elise Clark. Is she really worth the grind? Is she worth any kind of money at all? Let's see what kind of differences she makes in the P-51D. Alright, so we've got the P-51D here. This is a battle I had a while ago. I've had Elise Clark for a hot minute. Some quantifiers here. This is a tier 7 battle, and it's a really dumb map. Dislike this map quite a bit. The key to this map, though, is getting the command center in this. Excuse me, not the command center, the forward airbase here. And by getting the airbase, you'll have the ability to continue to spawn and eventually push the command center. If the other side gets the airbase here, the game's really over. I've been on this side of the spawn map and gotten the center and still lost, but that happens. You've still got the best chance of winning by getting this airbase, even if you're on the wrong side of the map. So, what are we up against? Well, we're in a tier 7 battle. We're up against an I-220, which, in all honesty, I absolutely love the I-220, and with a regular pilot, the I-220 should be able to come out on top versus the P-51D. But what Elise Clark allows you to do is have that a little bit more maneuverability, and just simply allows for you to actually win a dogfight versus an I-220. Right now we're trying to use our speed, which the P-51D is, in tier 7 against other fighters, it's going to have the speed advantage. And so we're using that speed advantage. You can see everybody following us along on the map, and we're trying to get some separation here. Just because you've got Elise Clark, which we'll take a look in the hangar and see what exactly she does to help out, doesn't mean that you're suddenly a turn fighter. You want to still leverage your strengths of the P-51D, because I mentioned in a previous video, the P-51D is relatively mediocre. It's, in my opinion, it was my least favorite of the altitude fighters, and Elise Clark certainly helps that, but it doesn't suddenly change this plane into a completely different plane style, right? So what I'm doing here, I want to actually point out, I've got a human in a FW-190, I believe, and he's trailing me. Actually, he might be he's in the I-220, my apologies. He's tailing me, but rather than just going in a straight line and trying to get away, I'm hitting the F7 key, which makes my friendlies attempt to help me. Had a human and a bot actually get on him, and much easier to kill him in that kind of situation. Now we've got a Spitfire 16, so this is a premium, incredibly turny, tier 7 British fighter. And so we want to go ahead and use our speed versus him. As soon as he starts turning away, then we can make a decision there. The fact of the matter is, yes, we've got this center location, but all it takes is for us, as soon as we lose this center location, the game's going to start spiraling into the enemy's favor very, very quickly. If we can get the command center, that'll certainly help. But in the meantime, we're actually going to play a lot of defense. In this battle, I wanted to just see, okay, what is Elise going to do for me? Is she going to be changing complete dynamics or what? Again, you don't want to toss out the fact that you're in a friggin' Mustang. You have a plethora of speed, especially at tier 9. Excuse me, tier 7. Wish it was tier 9, right? No. And you still want to leverage that fully. Take advantage of these guys not paying full attention to us, and pay attention to your ability to reach out a little bit further. I think the biggest impact with Elise is going to be the range boost that you get with your machine guns. The 50 caliber machine guns, one of the biggest downsides of those weapons is the lack of range. Cumulatively, they do a decent amount of damage. It's just you've got to get within range to have that impact. By having Elise Clark as your pilot, certainly allows you to start reaching out and touching someone a little bit sooner Sometimes that's all you need. And just Spitfire 14, not paying any attention again. We've got a heavy fighter inbound. So in those kind of situations, you don't want to turn away from a heavy fighter. That's actually giving them more opportunity to hurt you. You want to turn towards a heavy fighter, but not directly at them, because that would be suicide. But at a funky angle. And especially if you're going against a human, you never want to go at the same angle every time. If you're moving towards a heavy fighter and going up and to the right, they're eventually going to catch on. And the good ones will catch on by the second time. So, go up and to the left, go down and to the left. Do different things, but make sure that you're going towards them, closing the gap, and that way it's making it very, very difficult for you to be hit. Alright, so we're still defending the heck out of this center. We are setting ourselves up for success, but again, this could backfire, right? They have a little bit less, they've got half cap on one garrison and almost half cap on another garrison. If they do capture both of those, well, that would mean that we'd be down 3-1, and we'd be holding this center sector, but nothing really good is happening from holding this center sector other than we're holding on to 3 sectors for as long as possible. The reality is I was hoping that holding on to this center sector would allow for our friendlies to get the command center. And the fact of the matter is they've got one of the garrisons now. And one of the other garrisons is at half cap. So this could start slipping away. I still feel comfortable that if I hang on to the center sector here, we will win. We are up we're at 80% of the cap. And so the more that we hang on to the center, the longer we hang on to that garrison, we're going to win this. Because right now we're capturing the same amount of points they're capturing. They're not gaining on us, and we're so far ahead. They need to capture that garrison, or they need to capture the sector I'm at. And I figure, you know what? Let's see what kind of defense we can play here. Let's see what kind of impact we can have. And by staying in this particular sector, remember, this isn't a forward airbase, even though I said that earlier. It's a regular airbase, which means we can earn some health back. Are we going to die here? Clipped him with my wing. Classic. Plus set him on fire. So, I don't think it was the ram. It wasn't the ram that actually killed him. It was the fire that we set. Was able to kill him there. Go ahead and get rid of this Dora. Excellent. This is a wing legend. Nice. And at this point, even though we've only got this one sector, we're going to win this battle. As long as I don't die. It's a little bit of pressure on me, but I feel confident that I can go ahead and get on top of the enemy team here. The fact of the matter that they're just not paying enough attention to me, or they're not paying attention to me quick enough, means that I'm going to be able to come out on top during my engagements, right? I feel confident that going against even the Spitfire 16, which is clearly more maneuverable than me, and the I-220, which is basically on par, my ability to pay attention to what's going on around me is going to put me in a better situation than any of the enemies. Now that being said, I could still easily be derped out of existence by a heavy fighter, or have something like this A-5 come and get me because I'm not paying attention. Right now it is completely relying on me holding this center sector. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. If they had captured one of the garrisons quicker, we wouldn't have such a substantial lead. Then again, if we had actually captured the freaking command center like it was intended to do, we could have potentially gotten this win sooner. So we're definitely going to get the win now, even if we do die. There's just too many of us alive and not enough of them alive. Too many capture points to overcome. So we're able to really take a nice look here and see the flexibility this plane has. In a tier 7 battle, now that I've got it specialized, does definitely feel very comfortable. And I feel like I've got more flexibility. I'm not going to let this Spitfire come and get me. Sorry, dude. I've got the speed and the altitude to pull away. In this kind of situation, I don't think I'm going to have time to actually turn back around. But once I get far enough away, yeah, I'm going to turn back around like this, dive down on him, and let him feel my wrath, so to speak. We got a Marseille, got a Nakamatsu, Wing Legend, with Guardian, which is not something I typically get in a lot of my Mustangs. I typically try to capture sectors rather than defend sectors. But overall, quite a good battle. And in a tier 7 battle, which I wasn't able to get into in the last time I posted a video on the P-51D, with this Elise Clark pilot, pretty strong all-around outing. No complaints. Let's head back. So we got exactly 17 kills there, 19,000 personal points, about 4,600 aerial damage there, and 640 capture points. We captured one sector, 640 capture points. It's a lot of defense, right? And I know, don't need to yell at me about it. This is not a typical battle with this plane. That being said, I did fly it quite a bit in this last Saturday's stream and had pretty good battles in it. I'm pleasantly surprised. My issue is I'm not sure this is where I would want her to be. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a quick look at some differentiations on my different planes and see what a lot of other people are doing with Elise Clark as their pilot. All right, so let's take a look at Elise Clark. This is my P-51D today, and I still have her set up for this, and I'm not going to move her from the P-51D. But there's a lot of people that have moved her on from this plane. Why? Well, I touched on something there's an issue with in my first video on the P-51D, and that's simply because it runs into so many tier 8s. And granted, it's not an issue with being bottom tier. There really is no issue with that. Every single plane besides a tier 10 plane is going to be bottom tier at some point. The issue is so many of the tier 8s are so incredibly strong, such a huge jump up, that tier 7 can be kind of a mixed bag when it comes to those interactions. And it's beyond just the P-61, which is clearly a struggle to go against. You know, there's incredibly strong planes like the Horton 229, which is currently available. There's going to be planes like the BVP-203, which is rarely available, but when it is, and when you see it on the battlefield, it's typically flown by somebody that knows exactly what they're doing, making your life a living hell. Then there's even just planes that are readily available every single day that, in above average pilot's hands, can really ruin your day at tier 7. XP-58 is a prime example of one of those planes that it's not overpowered by any means, but if you run into it and somebody that knows what they're doing with a heavy fighter, it can really just, you know, make you feel this big when you're in a tier 7 plane. So let's take a quick look at some of her skills. I mentioned this in the first video. There is a few different skills. I've only got her at a 5-point skill set, which is exactly what anybody would get her at. There's going to be people out there that have already moved her up to a 9 or 10-point pilot, and kudos to them. And let's take a look at why they would do that. There's the P-51D Master, which this only works when Elise Clark is in the P-51D. And you get increased range of the forward firing armament by 10%. Increased accuracy of that armament by 5%. That is pretty significant. I mentioned it in the video. 10% extra range makes a difference. You feel almost like you've got 20mm cannons as far as your range is concerned, and it certainly makes you feel like you've got just a little bit more ability to actually start doing some damage sooner rather than getting right up on somebody. The fact that you've got better accuracy certainly doesn't hurt, but that's not what people are, you know, in awe about. The reality is a lot of people like this maneuver expert skill. What is the maneuver expert? Well, it increases the maneuverability by 4% across the board. Furthermore, it decreases the effect of sustained critical damage to the wings and tail. So what does that mean? That means that the effect of having critical damage done to your plane is reduced by 25%. So your engine, your wing, your tail, any of that kind of stuff gets knocked out. I don't know if it means the time frame is reduced by 25% or the impact to you is reduced by 25%, but either way, it's a better impact on your overall plane. Combination of that 4% plus the impact or positive impact to any critical damage done to your plane is pretty significant, and the fact that it can be impactful on any plane means that there's a lot of people that are going to take this from the P-51D and put it on some random other fighter plane that they prefer to be in. You don't even need it to be in a fighter plane. That's the kicker, right? I know quite a few people that doesn't matter what pilot it's trained for, they can put it in a premium plane, so they're going to put it in their P-61. 4% extra maneuverability in a P-61, which is already a broken plane for maneuverability, makes the P-61 incredibly maneuverable. When you're taking a look at that kind of impact that you can have, it is significant. So putting Elise Clark in the P-61 puts the turn time down to 11.4 seconds. Yeah, that's not a Yak 15 turn time, but this is a heavy fighter with an 11.4 second turn time. more maneuverable than the vast majority of multi-role fighters at this tier. Heck, it's more maneuverable than a JL-1A37, which is a fighter. I've got mine built for maneuverability, and it's still less maneuverable than this heavy fighter. So Elise Clark's gonna have a huge impact there, right? But let's not even talk about the fact that you can put this pilot in your P80 or your XP58 or your P39N. Of course, you can put it in any premium plane and get an impact to your maneuverability, but just putting Elise into any of your tech line planes is going to have an impact on that. And a lot of people have been putting her into the F-86. Now, I've got an F-86 pilot. I've got my F-86 down to 8.7 seconds, but if I'm able to put Elise in here and have her, even before I've even moved her to 100%, her maneuverability is doing very, very well. As soon as I put her to the 100%, the overall impact of these skills are going to be increased by 25%, which is probably going to already put her on par with my 12-point F-86 pilot. 5-point Elise Clark, 12-point regular pilot, already have the same maneuverability. What's going to happen when I get her to 12 points? You can just imagine how maneuverable an F-86 is going to be, and it's already very maneuverable. To have an F-86 be almost on par with something like a Yak-30 is kind of mind-blowing, considering all the rest of the benefits that you get of an F-86 with its incredible altitude performance, its incredible airspeed, and its just ability to impact the battle on so many different levels. Suddenly making it that much more maneuverable, again, once you get it to a high-point pilot, once Elise is there, suddenly the F-86 is like otherworldly. That's the impact that can be a little bit scary. Yeah, are you losing 2 points that don't do anything because they're the P-51D master skill? Yes, that's true. But that 4% maneuverability on a plane like this can be incredibly impactful. That 4% maneuverability on any of those premium planes I just mentioned can be very impactful because the American planes are not built around maneuverability. They're built typically around airspeed and overall balance of their characteristics. They typically don't have the strongest guns. They typically don't have very good maneuverability. But if you suddenly give it good maneuverability with an already balanced armament, then suddenly you're tipping those scales. So that's something that a lot of people have been talking about. That's something that a lot of people have been doing. I'm keeping Elise Clark in the P-51D simply because she's got the P-51D master. I know there's a lot of different people that will move around to their different specialty pilots. I know for a fact there's people that are putting their special tornado pilot in the Hunter, simply because the benefits help the Hunter out, even though you're still missing out on 2-point skills. And so there's a lot of people that will move pilots around. I encourage you to experiment with that and find a plane that you feel that a special pilot works best in, not necessarily the plane it's built for. I'm going to keep Elise Clark in this plane and continue to actually enjoy playing the plane a little bit more now, as long as I'm avoiding some of those B-29C / P-61 / XP-58 kind of games. Heck, I've even had struggles against things like an I-260, because you can still get blown out of the sky by an I-260 if they get some RNG in their favor. So I'd love to hear your opinion. Have you gotten this pilot yet? Is Elise Clark in your depot, or is it something you're still working at? Have you gotten stuck on one of the missions? I'd love to hear your comments. If you've got questions and wanting to know exactly the best tips and tricks for trying to overcome a specific mission, please comment down below. I'd be happy to give some additional information. Or you can hop in my Discord. The community there is really incredibly helpful, and they'll be happy to provide some tips and tricks. And that way, hopefully we can all get her. Is she worth the money? I would say no. Simply because P-51D, if you're taking full advantage of this pilot, P-51D is just kind of in a funky spot. Even if it makes this plane noticeably better, it's still not on par with, it's still going to struggle in tier 8 matches. And if you're going to be moving her to something like the F-86, or whatever plane you want to move her to, is it worth the amount of money that Wargaming is asking for? I really don't think so. Any kind of micro buff that you get is certainly not worth $20 or whatever they're asking for the full amount. Now, your mileage may vary. It's your money. You do as you please. If you can get all the way to, like, you know, 2 missions from the end and you're at that 8 fighter mission and you're really struggling, well, maybe the $5 or whatever it'll cost to get the last amount of tokens is worth it to you. It very well may be worth it. But my question would be, how often do you fly the P-51D? Did you enjoy it? If you enjoyed it, you know, that changes things up. But if not, I'd be hard-pressed to think that Elise Clark is worth any kind of money. Certainly worth the grind, in my opinion. I didn't mind the grind. I was lucky with some of my missions to get them when I got them. And I'm glad that I've got her, but I wouldn't have gone out of my way to spend any money on her. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, temper your expectations. This is certainly one of the better games I've had with the P-51D. We'll see. Maybe the future will be more of the same now that I've got Elise Clark. I'm not going to hold my breath. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.